Today we're going to talk about touch-ups in painting projects. And what I want to tell you today is it's actually the good painters that do touch-ups, not the bad ones. James is in the house, another project on site, and today the paint company that we're working with is doing some touch-ups. And this is a completely normal and common thing that happens with paint projects. Today I want to talk to both the painters watching especially, but also the homeowners that are working with painters. With any renovation, it's usually a process, and it's usually a process that's done by hand, by people, and it's extremely common for there to be things that were maybe missed or that just need a little bit of love after the fact. There can be a variety of reasons that this happens, but it happens all the time. Maybe your painters have finished up, packed up, you paid them, and then all of a sudden you discover a little bit of flashing that's coming through with some of the plaster, or maybe there is a baseboard that was just missed a little bit. What do? Do you get angry? Do you fester? Do you blame the painters for not doing their job properly? No. The answer is you call them. You call them to get some touch-ups done. And what happens is any good, respectable paint company will come back and address those little issues and fix them up so you're completely satisfied. And I know being a Canadian, sometimes we feel a little bit shy and timid, and maybe we don't want to say anything because we don't want to be a bother, or maybe you just assume that they're not going to come back and you don't want to work with them and see them again. But I'm here to tell you that it's actually a good thing if you reach out to your painter to get those touch-ups done. They should be happy to do those touch-ups because it means you're giving them an opportunity to correct those little mistakes and address those things that happened and get the project done the way they intended. The reason touch-ups on painting projects are more common than normal is because there are so many different variables that you have to consider, mainly lighting conditions and changing lighting conditions. So not only do we have to address how the paint reacts to the walls, we also have to factor in drying times, changing lighting conditions outside, and even if you're using your own interior lighting or spotlights, it still can be tricky to completely see every single square centimeter of the house and of the walls to make sure they're covered appropriately. So painters, don't worry if you gotta do touch-ups. It doesn't mean you did a bad job. It just means you needed that extra day to really see things and make sure everything is hunky-dory, as they say in the business. And if you're a homeowner that just worked with a painter and you feel bad about reaching out, again, don't. It's part of the job, it's part of the process. You gotta make sure you're happy and satisfied with your project because you paid a lot of money, so give the painter the opportunity to correct those little adjustments. So we're currently upstairs with Natalie, one of the owners of Natick Painting. She's doing some touch-ups on some of the cutting upstairs in the hallway. So Natalie, what is the nature of these touch-ups?
Well, the job was massive, just 4 days. And we did it gradually. Like the rooms that we started with, we always can have a chance just to take a look and improve or do touch-ups. Now, this part of the hallway was the very last day of our project. And when we finished, it looked good. And we applied 2-coat on cutting and rolling as we discussed. Mm-hmm. And the customer took a look. And it looked good, but in a day or two, when paint finally occurred, it's just like we see some imperfections. Really hard to see them, but if you just look harder, then you can see the difference. So it took us maybe half an hour just to do all the touch-ups, and we are really glad that they brought the subject. Some customers, they like it, but it bothers them, and then it just there is no reason for that. We just encourage that. And my advice for my potential customers and other people, just make sure that before you hire someone and you got the price right, ask if it included just coming back after a week or two just for a few touch-ups if it's necessary. It's very important. You might learn it from testimonials that people write about the company, or you can ask them straight, or you can put it on your contract. So one of those things will protect you from frustration and disappointment. And we as the painters will love people to be satisfied completely.
Natalie made a very, very good point. You shouldn't think of touch-ups as something that happens after the job. It's something that should really happen throughout a project. So as the painters are moving from one space to another, as long as you have that clear understanding of one another, you should be able to check the work, make sure it's up to your standards, and then while they're still working in another area of the home, if there is something that needs to be touched up, they can do it really, really easily. Natic Painting makes sure to supply touch-up paint for their projects that are all labeled. So this is the original paint that they were using, and it's so important to make sure you hold on to these, because if they do need to come back, this is the exact same paint that they used. It's the highest likelihood that it's gonna match because what's on the wall right now, right? Make sure to hold on to these. And ideally, store them in a climate-controlled environment. So a closet is perfect, a finished basement is great. If you are keeping it in the garage, make sure it's not on bare concrete because that gets really cold and it could affect the paint, more so long-term, but even still. Control what you can so the painter is in the best position to deliver on the project for you. What I want to provide you right now with is some strategies and some expertise on how to perhaps minimize the opportunity for touch-ups to happen, especially on larger projects. And this is for both homeowners and painters because really the whole process is pretty collaborative. A good way to minimize touch-ups is to work in a way that's compartmentalized. So perhaps you do one section of the house completely one day, then go to the next and do that, then to the next. This accomplishes a few things all at once. Once you've started and finished an area, that means the homeowner can enjoy that space now and live in it and not be in constant reno mode. But also the more important thing for this video is it gives them an opportunity to see what a finished product looks like, and then while you're getting another area done, they can check the previous painted area, see if any touch-ups are required while the painters are still in the house. Now, of course, everyone has their own process, right? Some people like to do all the prep for the entire house and then prime the whole thing and then sand and paint. But if you do have the opportunity to break things down a little bit, it makes your customer's life a bit easier because they can get back to living in those specific spaces, but also they can take the opportunity to really examine the work you've done, make sure it's up to their standards, and then you can move on to the next one. So that brings us to this project. We have touch-ups in this house, which was a multi-day project as well. And coincidentally, the only place that really needed touch-ups was the work that was done on the very last day. It was the front hallway leaving the house, so the customer wanted constant access to that area until the last day, so that was the last thing that was painted. And because it was on the last day of the project, there was no opportunity for the painters to come and examine it the next day with new, fresh, brand new daylight, which is why the customers were able to be like, okay, there's a few things that maybe need another little touch up here and there in the hallway. So what happened? Well, the customer noticed a few things a few days after that maybe needed a little bit of love, and they just simply called Natic Painting. They came back and now they're getting all of it done for them. So that's another way you can interpret touch-ups, is essentially you're getting an extra little bonus day to make sure everything is completely touched up as you need it to be. One final important thing I want to leave with you homeowners. Calling a painter for touch-ups is not an issue whatsoever. However, I will say if you call them to get touch-ups done, make sure you're making that one call. So before the painters come and do all the little fixes, please make sure that you are as thorough as possible in your inspection. Take some painter's tape, put some tape on all the little spots that need some touch-ups so the painters can come in, see what needs to be done, maybe check themselves as well, and then fix it one time. If you have to keep calling them back a few times, it's just a headache for everyone. Take those couple extra days, make sure it's all covered, so then you'll be happy and they'll be happy and everyone's gonna be happy. Touch-ups, they're part of the gig. Don't be scared to ask for them to be done. Painters, don't feel bad to do them. We're all human. Paint is tricky. Curing times are strange for some products. Some drywall soaks up a lot of paint and doesn't dry the way that you're used to. So it's all part of the process. But as long as you give the painter the opportunity to fix those things and make those changes, then you're doing your job so they can do their job. Big thanks to Natic Painting for having me on their project today. They do great work in the Greater Toronto area, so I'll leave their information down below for you. Here's another video on how to address bulkheads, which is kind of tricky for some people. They don't know whether to paint it the wall color or the ceiling color, or maybe a bit of both. But I address all these things in that video with Natic Painting as well, so check it out. See ya.